Thank you so much for being here and jumping on with me. For those who don't know you, Cal, and they don't really know much of what you do and what your platforms involve, can you explain, give us a bit of your backstory and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, so I was just a normal guy, still am a normal guy for that matter. Um, and I went through a divorce, which was normal. Um, but it wasn't normal because I didn't understand what was happening in there as far as the court was and what I thought the court was supposed to be based on TV or whatever else. I had never really been immersed in court like that before.
Mm.
And something was wrong. Like this isn't what I thought it was supposed to be. And they weren't listening to me. They weren't trying to get to the truth. Truth didn't seem to matter. Nothing seemed to really matter. It was like there was another agenda going on, and
Mm.
they just had to put on this show of somehow, you get to speak, but we're doing our thing over here, And so I did figure out, after a few years, what that was. They were they were taking the child support orders. And once you understand the definition of a bill of exchange, a child support order is a bill of exchange, and therefore it is money on the face of it. And the original, once it's signed by the judge, it becomes the exact amount of money that's written on there, which could be over, 20-year period,
Mm.
and the court keeps it. So it was a big industry, probably millions, if not well, probably billions of dollars worldwide, but a huge, huge industry of making money off the train wreck of families. So that's what was going on in there, but I didn't know it at the time. So it was just really my search for trying to figure out what was going on in there and why this thing was so oppressive upon me because I'm not a bad person. I'm not perfect in any way, but I'm not a deadbeat dad. I'm not a bad person or anything like that. But I was labeled all this and treated that way,
Mm.
and uh, and it was just really shocking to me. So, I started I got lawyers at first, and the lawyers took our house. The lawyers worked together. Like my ex-wife's lawyer and my lawyer worked together to basically take our house. And once they got our house sold and got all the proceeds, they just dropped us and we were self-litigants. So they fired us basically after they got our all our assets. And then so I had to learn on my own. I had to immerse myself in this, try and figure out what was happening. And so I read a lot of acts, you know, just tried to learn, went on a couple of websites. One of them in particular, this is where I started to figure out that there's, a conspiracy going on. But one in particular was called Dad's Divorce. And it said, if you're reading this, this is what just happened to you. And it was word for word. I mean, the list of magazines, TV shows, what was happening, how long since the last baby. It was just like, what is this? Age, and they said this is 95% of the scenarios in a divorce case. It's always this. And so I went, okay, well, how can that be? That's not a coincidence. And so that's my first inkling into there's something going on in the world that I wasn't aware of up to that point.
Mm.
And so again, I just started learning, started to meet some of these guys that were doing alternative law and common law and I started hearing stuff about common law and this capitalized name on the birth certificate, and I was like, what is all this gibberish? Like I never heard of any of this before. And so I um I started going to these meetings, and is this all true? And I started researching, and one thing led to another. Started going to meeting other people. Speakers would come, and they would give their point of view, and I started assimilating all this, and it turns out that some of this stuff was true. So my life kind of was going in a certain direction, and now it's going in another direction and never really stopped.
Mm.
So eventually I got free of the whole thing because I learned commerce at sort of the going through one guru to the next and trying their things. And when I got to commerce, a lot of things made sense in why I was failing in all these other attempts. It had way more like the point of view showed how I was making a mistake in this hidden jurisdiction. And it made sense to me because I had already been through that, and I couldn't figure out why did I lose. I had the best argument there, and I could see everybody's body language is telling me that I'm right, but I'm still losing.
Mm.
And so my first commercial move, the judge ran out of the room, and that's where things really started to change for me.
Wow.
That was that was the beginning of where I am now. So it turned out that there's this whole commercial thing, and I started to learn it, and I saw judges just getting out of the way, left, right, and center, which led to politicians leaving office, and all the way up to um, the head guy in Canada, and then all the way to the Queen.
Mm.
So it was that's how this kind of all came about. It was my own journey trying to get free of this whole oppressive system. Once
Wow.
I got free of it, my friend Josh Del Sol did a movie on the smart meters, and then he asked me if there's a solution that he could do because all he was showing was the problem and there was no answer for it. And so everything that I had learned up to that point was now, oh, I know exactly what they're doing, and here's exactly what to do. And and sure enough, we got 20 people in Seattle to do it, and again, a bunch of the city councilors all stepped down, and two mayors stepped down, and they all kept their analog meter. So it just kind of morphed into that, and then it grew and grew and grew and grew, and I was just kind of hanging on, not really planning any of this. So
Wow.
that's yeah. So it's kind of like a calling. I can see there's a path that I had to go through, but I didn't plan any of it. Not nothing. Yeah.
Mm. That's amazing. When you mention commerce, are you referring to the UCC, that kind of stuff?
The UCC is a codified version of an ancient commercial system called law merchant,
Mm.
and it goes way back into antiquity, and that's the prevailing controlling mechanism in the planet above all countries. They run all countries through the banking system, through the money system. Everything's done by money, and it's ancient. And those families they used to be called the merchants. Now they're called the bankers, because there wasn't banks in the Middle Ages and all that. They didn't exist, but they grew and grew and grew and got more and more power. And they hid the jurisdiction, law merchant itself, but you can still find it in federal acts. They still mention it, but they really try and downplay it. They don't teach it at law school, and so most lawyers are like, "What are you talking about? I've never heard of law merchant." Yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
hmm
And is that all worldwide? It's like a universal kind of,
Yep.
okay, there you
And
go.
The Bible calls it Babylon, Mystery Babylon. So that's how it describes it. It's the merchant system, money system that's controlling everything.
Wow. Okay. And so you've now developed a platform to help people understand how to kind of break free of this system, or how to use the straw man for your benefit. Like what's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So it's hard to get out of it. Um, you can do all the processes, but they don't really recognize them. So what I found, especially going through court, is instead of trying to fight that and trying to get rid of the capitalized name and all that stuff, I tried all that stuff. I'm not the name, and all I did was get arrested. And you know, once I learned commerce, I went, no, it doesn't matter because I can come in and just do commercial moves. And that's the key. It was my knowledge about how it works and then working it. And I saw just so many people running for the corners, right? It was staggering. So it became very real. It's not one or two, it's like 30 or 40 stories of top people leaving office on the same day and running, not coming in the room, judges not coming in the room, judges leaving the room, judges recusing themselves, retired. Like it was just
Wow.
so it became very real. Nobody's ever been able to rebut it, not that they have to, but yeah, this law merchant is still alive and well. And you'll find it in Australia in your Bills of Exchange Act. And I
Mm.
can show it to you. It mentions it. The
Wow.
UCC also mentions it. And
Mm.
yet they try and pretend like it doesn't exist.
Mm. So to kind of explain it in the layman's terms for those who aren't well versed, our court system is pretty much running on commercial law, but because we don't know, we're always the debtor kind of situation. Is that like a good summary?
That's a good summary. What happened, there used to be separate jurisdictions, the Admiralty, which was more about shipping, the common law, which, or the civil law, depending on where you lived in the world, which had its own courts. But if we just went with the common law in England, it was the King's Courts, the Exchequer, King's Bench, and the Court of Common Pleas. And then you had the pie powder courts that ran the merchant fairs, where all the merchants were trading. And then in some of the port towns, they had staple courts. These were separate from the king's courts. The merchants ran it themselves. It was unwritten. It was all very fluid, based on principles and customs, not rule number 5.3-C. They didn't have any of that. It was all like, it had to make sense. It had to be based on honesty and what's the right thing to do. So those courts, they moved very quickly. They didn't take months. Almost every adjudication was a matter of hours, not weeks, days, months. So everything moved very quickly. They now call it summary judgment in our courts, so that it's still operating. So in the 1700s, Lord Mansfield fused the law merchant into the common law courts and fused admiralty into the common law courts. So now everything's done in those buildings with those judges, but you don't know which jurisdiction you're in. You could be in the common law, statutory law, commercial law, or admiralty. And until you can figure that out, you just think you're in one thing, and they allow you to believe that. So when I came in and started doing law merchant, they didn't have an answer for it, because now I'm at their peak of their deception, and they didn't have anything higher, so that's why they were running. They was like, I don't know what to do. Like, he's out moneying us, and he's beating us at our own game, is what was happening.
Yeah. That's interesting because I remember when I first started to go down this path in learning about all of this, and I was practicing in court a 10-kilometer speeding fine. And one of the things I learned was to challenge jurisdiction. And I remember when I was challenging jurisdiction, and I asked the magistrate, "What jurisdiction is this?" He would not answer me. He kept referring to the location of the court. This is the court of Liverpool. I'm like, that's not a jurisdiction. How can I make enter a plea if I don't even know what jurisdiction this is, And I was hoping he would say admiralty or even criminal, because I would have been like, well, where's the victim? So he wouldn't answer that question, and he got very funny. And so it's very interesting how jurisdiction is, knowing what jurisdiction you're in is really important.
That's the key. If you understand the jurisdictions and then you operate in the highest one, they don't have an answer for it. They really don't. And running is all they can do. They just run. And so that was the key that I figured out, that they don't have anything above law merchant. They hit it. They assumed nobody would ever find it and operate in it. So they could slide into law merchant and you wouldn't really know the difference. And now you're in a whole other jurisdiction, but you have to be able to operate that way, and you can't argue. So what they tell you to do is present your arguments. So that's what I was doing. We need written arguments from you. And so I write out these great arguments with statutes, and well, from their point of view, well, you just lost because you argued. I didn't know that. So that's why my arguments, I'm going, these are great arguments. And I could see they were like, whoa, this is but you lose. What does it take to win in here?
Yeah.
It took commerce, it took understanding what was really going on, and that's when my life changed.
Wow. So you mentioned that lawyers have no clue, but I'm assuming that the magistrates or the judges are aware of this, right? They all kind of know,
Most of them.
most of them. Yeah.
Yeah. The higher up you go, then they definitely do know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I do find when people do challenge in court, the magistrate will just do whatever they want anyway. And so you have to keep contesting and going higher and higher. And I wonder if that's because they don't want to deal with it and they want you to do that and go higher above, or because they just don't know what they're doing.
They do, some don't know what they're doing. Like if you're in a like traffic court, I would say likely the judge may have heard something but doesn't really get it. But if you're at a Supreme Court level, they understand exactly what's going on.
Mm, yeah.
And so if you poke at that, they really get nervous because at the end of the day, in most countries, like Western countries, like the common law countries, they're operating as a business and therefore they are subject to law merchant. And if they're in that jurisdiction, they're not really a judge. They're somebody acting as a judge and like a TV show, really. And therefore they're liable if everything isn't de jure, like with proper authority all the way down, then you're not covered. Only your bond covers you in commerce. So you have to have some insurance, like malpractice insurance. But I was coming in and out bonding them. I was dwarfing their bonds by, you know, probably 300 times at least. If they had a million, I was coming in with 300 million, and if they had a million liability insurance, I'm dwarfing it. That's not going to cover it.
Yeah.
That's why they were like, I'm not participating in this.
And is there a way to settle out of having to go to court now, like through the process that you've learned, instead of having to go in there and, deal with magistrates and stuff, can you actually deal with it in paperwork out of court before it has to get there?
Absolutely. Yeah, you just do an administrative process.
Mm.
It's not, they may still, like I'll just explain to you, but you get them to answer where their authority comes from, which is the jurisdictional challenge you were doing. You just take it a step further and say, I need you to answer this question within 14 days. Without the time limit, they just play. So, and if you don't answer within 14 days, this is what's going to happen. I'm not coming. And then if you have an arrest warrant for me, I'm going to charge you X amount of dollars per day.
Mm.
Do we have a deal? That's when the judges are like, okay, let's make this one go away somehow.
Mm.
And it's not 100%, but because they will test you. If you just throw paperwork around, they're going, no, I don't think they have the guts to do this. If we arrest them, they're gonna cave. So they'll try it. If you don't cave, now they've got a problem.
Mm. So it might take you being arrested to kind of show that you're confident of what you know.
Yes, like the Bible says, when you've done all you can to stand, you have to keep standing. So they arrested me one time and I had to stay in jail for 60 days because I just refused to back down. And they thought I would. And now it's like, and every day that went by, I'm not backing down. And they're like, well, now we're getting in deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah, because you can actually put in a claim for like kidnapping you for 60 days.
Absolutely. So what ended up happening is my guys did a habeas corpus and put $300 million promissory note, which they took as payment. And then they ended up owing me $300 million because she could only give me one day in jail. But I already did 59 or 60. So she tried to give me 59 days credit. And I turned that back on her, and then it was the collecting of that where I saw, top politicians, even one guy who used to work for the IMF and the Bank of Canada, which is the central bank. This guy is like a who's who of that whole upper international banking
Mm.
And he's running on the day he gets mail from me. That's when we went, okay, this is serious.
Mm.
That guy left with no notice. And he did a press conference in the morning, and the mail came afterwards. He left in the afternoon. This is what really tipped us off because he didn't mention any kind of retirement or like business as usual. All of a sudden, he's leaving a couple hours after the press conference, and like, I'm out.
He doesn't want to accept liability, sort of thing. Is that? Yeah. Yeah. Wow, there you go. So you cracked the code, eh? 60 days in jail was worth it.
Well, it was, it wasn't at the time. I really didn't enjoy that, but in hindsight, it doesn't, it's a memory now, but it was not easy to do that.
Yeah, I bet.
It was, yeah,
Take someone with real big kahunas to do something like that. Sorry. Ah, but yeah, because of that, you've cracked something. So thank you for your service, sir.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's all good. It's a path that I was led down and I followed. That's all it really was, and so now I have some answers. I don't know everything, but I do know quite a bit.
Mm.
um, because I learned it that the hard way, and I saw things, and everything was experimental, not theoretical. We actually did these things, sent these things, and watched that guy, these people run over
Practical.
and over and over. So it's not theoretical.
Mm.
We did it in real life.
Yeah, yeah, literally. You've brought up the Bible a few times. So I know if there are a few groups out there who actually refer to the Bible as like actual law or the book of law. Is that what you also have discovered in your experience?
Absolutely, there's one in every court.
Mm.
And when I grew up, there was one in every school, and they took it out of the schools. So it would make sense if they're going to take it out of the schools, they would take it out of the court, but they didn't.
Hmm.
And it's not because I think they would like to, but they can't. And so it definitely is in evidence in every case. And so every courtroom has one, not just the courthouse, the courtroom.
Wow,
Yeah.
interesting.
So there's a reason for that. And also what I found in commerce as I was learning it was a parallel to the Bible. The same principles, um, they were said a different way, but it was the same thing. And I'm like, oh, one of these is copying the other. Like something's going on here because this is the same thing with different words. It's the same things were happening. So I was able to learn how this worked by learning this thing and vice versa. Like it was a real eye opener that there's something more going on here.
Mm.
And then when I looked at the Bible in that way, where it's more like a contract, it takes on new meaning. Like a lot of the stories in there and the things said in there take on new meaning, and you put it in that light. It's really powerful.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Bible became a very important book, not because of any kind of religious reasons. It's a book of the law and it's a book of commerce. It shows you, or actually, commerce I think is copying the Bible or the spiritual principles,
Mm.
and they just did it in a way where money is the measuring and money is the God really, and but the word in the Bible in the original text for debt is sin.
Mm.
And every verse that you read where you see the word sin, you could put debts there and vice versa. So it's like, oh, so that's what that's saying. And
Oh.
yeah, it's pretty remarkable actually.
Yeah, it's amazing how when you learn something and your perspective changes and you go back to reading another thing, you see it very differently, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So I started seeing the Bible very differently. And so I teach it from that perspective, and people are very um I get a lot of positive comments. I'm sure there's some negative ones too, heretic or whatever, but
Mm.
it's because of my experience I've been there, I did it. I'm not coming up with this theoretical. I saw it. I lived it. I got the pepper spray still in my face, like yeah, I went through it. So I have a different perspective on all that and a different respect for all of it because because of my experiences. It was not fun. Not even close. It was very oppressive, very dangerous. I could have not made it out of there, especially during the 60 days. They put me in danger. They tried to put me in danger twice
Wow.
with some very violent people, and nothing worked, but they definitely tried.
Mm. How do you feel now, doing what you're doing? Do you feel like there is a target on yourself?
No, matter of fact, it's the opposite.
Mm. It's good.
The last few police interactions that I've had were very short. I say very little, one or two words. And the very last one I had, they didn't even two officers I walked by without a mask, and they didn't even make eye contact with me. It was like they couldn't see me.
Wow.
And I've had a couple experiences like that where it's like these are not the droids you're looking for, and I'm like, what just happened there? Because that's a bit weird. Because I'm just like going through. So it's the opposite. It's almost like I'm living in a different reality, and their reality can't even come upon me.
I truly believe that it's very much an energetic thing because ever since I discovered my power, who I really am, not a slave, no, not this deader walking around, I find that every time there's like a RBT, which is like a breathalyzer on the side of the road, they'll stop everyone and I'll be the only one they let through. And I'm like ready to talk to them, like in my power. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, it's like I'm invisible now, so whatever. Like I'll take that.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So
Yeah.
it's like that. The any interactions I've had are very short or not at all. Like it's like they can't see me. I
Mm,
went through an airport and same thing. I was marked to be searched, and I walked out
mm.
right past her, gave her my card that had the markings on it to search, and she said thank you, and I'm like, okay, I'll just carry on then.
That's so good. And I know, like with your story in the beginning, where you mentioned you had to deal with a lot of the family court stuff or divorce court stuff. Can commercial law or what you're using and what you've learned be applied to cases where there's like children involved, like custody cases, like in family courts in general, or is that kind of different scenario?
No, because like I said, it's happening anyway.
Okay.
The child support order is like a bill of exchange. The definition of a bill of exchange is person A owes person B an exact amount on an exact date and a signature.
Mm,
That's the definition of a bill of exchange. So it's a debt instrument. So it's a signed, dated, some certain, and two parties, at least two parties. You can have three, but you have to have and when it comes down to it, you could have party A is party B. Well, that's how crazy it gets. But regardless of that, you have to have two parties written on there. So when you have a child support order, you have dad owes mom
mm.
X amount of dollars on such and such a date, and the judge signs it. Instantly a bill of exchange. Big
Wow.
ones.
Mm.
Because they have monthly payments for 10, 15, 20 years if the child's really young.
Mm.
That document, the original, is the money. You have to wrap your head around this. It doesn't represent money. It is the money in their system. A debt note, like a $20 bill, is a debt note.
Mm. Okay.
And so they're creating these debts on pieces of paper with the proper everything there, and they keep them. Good luck out there paying your child support, and good luck trying to collect from him. We don't care because we've got paid over here. See ya. Next.
Oh my God.
And that's what I was sensing when I was in there. I was like, what's going on here? You're not even listening to, you're not listening to her. You're not listening to me. It's like you have something else in mind. You just want to get through this. Like, can we just get to the, and it took me years to figure it out. Oh, that's what they were. That's why I felt that. They were trying to let's get to the child support order. We need the money. Like it's just a money maker.
Yeah.
And they have this company called Themis that enforces everything. And I think they're buying up the bills at a discount or whatever. But it's a huge multi-billion dollar industry. The whole divorce, it's an industry.
Oh,
And most of us can't figure this out.
yeah. Yeah. I find
We
the
just we
family
just
courts here, it's horrendous. The family courts, like
yeah.
the amount of people who lose so much money fighting for their child, it is so heartbreaking. So I'm just trying to work out if this can be applied in that situation. And I'm sure a lot of people would be very relieved to hear that, you know?
Well, they can, but you can settle out of court if you like. What happens is you go get a lawyer, and then the lawyer feeds the emotional because there's always emotional, well, not always, but most of the time in a split up, there's emotions and they feed it. I can remember looking at my lawyer and he's swearing away and calling, names and I'm like, I said, who are you talking about?
Mm.
Because I thought, are you talking about the other lawyer? Because they're both female, right? So then the words were female based. So I'm like, who are you talking about? He goes, well, your wife. And I'm like, you don't talk to her about her like that.
Mm.
Like, I'm not buying into this. So I figured out what, I still didn't know anything, but I was like, why are you saying, like, why are you trying to get me going here? Like, I'm not, I don't feel that. He was trying to fuel it. And I
Mm.
remember going back to get my papers from him like years later, and he said, come and get your papers, or we're going to destroy them. And I went into the office to get them. They were in a box. And he's in the room with a woman, and she's crying, and he's handing her tissues. And I looked at him through the door, and he looked at me, and we both knew you are a snake. And he's like, I don't really care.
Mm.
I'm here for the money. And that was it.
Mm.
So he's like, oh yeah, you poor thing. And
Yeah.
not sincere at all. Just egging it on.
I think lawyers are my most disliked people. Not gonna lie. Because I've dealt with them before, and there was one who was like, "Oh, $20,000," because early days in the lockdowns, I got arrested, and I hadn't known much then. And he, $20,000, I'm going to rip that out of my butt and give it to you. I'm like, I'm just finished uni. I'm still studying, you know? I'm like, stuff you. And then I learned it myself. I settled out of court. I was like, $20,000 would have gone down the drain if I had that money and was that desperate and that, not in the place of taking initiative. You know what I mean? When all
I
I did
do.
was settle out of court, and I was just like, these people are frauds, and they prey on your vulnerability.
They do.
I'm sure there's good ones out there, but most of the time,
There might be some good ones out there, but one thing I hear, every now and again, oh, there's an awake lawyer. You got to meet this awake lawyer, and I'm like, okay, no, never been one. The minute you want to go away from the system, no, they're not. They're like, no, 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 you can't do that. Oh yeah, yeah, I can. No, no, yeah, you're not awake.
well, they serve at the bar. They don't serve,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know. So
yeah.
yeah. Well, tell us, Cal, about your movement. I think you mentioned you had something going on this week called the Wave. Can you tell us about that? What?
Yeah, so the wave is we bring all people together, especially some new people. They come in for the wave, And then we sort of handhold them through the whole process. It's an 8-week thing. We have weekly meetings where you can ask your questions, and then you get a little task. Okay, do this week, do that the next week, and then we're going to be doing this, and then you send your documents. And so it just helps people to feel less overwhelmed because there's others with them, and they're being sort of watched over week by week. And this will be our first. We did a test wave. We did a first wave was the Anzac wave, which was Australia and New Zealand back last spring. And then we did a test wave worldwide just before Christmas. And now this is going to be our first where we're really going to push, and then the next wave, and just keep pushing against the system. And so what we see is when you do it in mass like that, you start to see the mass drop-offs as well. Like the people who are receiving these things, they all start running. And so we can kind of get just keep pushing harder and harder as we make the waves bigger. Just so you know, we've had quite a few step downs in Australia.
Wow. That's interesting. When you guys have done the wave.
Well, even just people just doing it. So we 3 of your premiers and your previous prime minister all got notices of liability.
Wow. That's
Like
powerful.
Mark McGowan, Andrews, and the woman, I can't remember her name, but she was just recent, like maybe a couple of months, like maybe 2 months.
Yeah, wow.
Anyway, yeah, and then there's health ministers, and there's been quite a few in Australia. We got quite a group going there, and it's
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
What's the end goal or the vision you have by doing these initiatives in getting en masse of people to serve these politicians and stuff? What's your goal? Like, what are you trying to achieve?
We're trying to be a part of the new, like a parallel system.
Hmm.
So there's other people doing other things. Our task, I guess, because we've just fell into it, is to um, take the money from them and
Mm.
collapse that system. So at the same time, so we're following Revelation 18, where it's the fall of Babylon. We're doing the instructions in there. That's what we're doing, and it's working. So
Wow.
yeah, so we want to bill all the money out of the system, because that without money, they can't do all the bad things that they're doing. Like none of it, everything's driven by money. All the spraying in the air, the vaccines, the child and human trafficking. All of it is drugs. All of it is money driven. And it's
Mm.
because certain families, like I explained from a long time ago, who were merchants, have amassed enormous amounts of money,
Yeah. Just from us, pretty much. Yeah.
pretty much,
Yeah.
because we were signing pieces of paper and we didn't understand what we were doing.
Mm. Are we close to collapsing the Babylonian system?
Um, I don't know what it's going to take, but we're on our way for sure. And there's nothing they can do about it. Like they just get out of the way. We had the Queen of Denmark, which is a royal.
Mm.
She stepped down on New Year's Eve.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's when you get a royal, that's pretty serious.
That is big. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, so she got 14 people sending to her.
Wow.
So it overwhelmed. Yeah, it overwhelmed her.
Imagine like 100.
Well, this is the thing. All it takes, this is with a few hundred people sending, and we've probably had 60-ish people step down worldwide
Mm.
in that range. We're trying to compile the list, and then go through them, and get the ones that are um the best ones. But it's happening so fast. Every week somebody's stepping down. Like it's amazing to watch.
It's amazing.
So
Yeah.
we're putting chips in the dam, and just keep doing it, and it will eventually collapse because it's very fragile. It's a
Yeah.
house of cards, really.
Yeah.
It's an illusion. Everything they do is all black magic and illusions.
Yeah. I do believe that collectively we are ascending, and this is part of that ascension process.
Yes,
Eventually we are going to
no
demolish
money.
this old system, But I get to this point where I'm like, okay, I know it's going to happen, but then what comes next? How do we deal with that? Like, what do we establish next to make sure that we create a system that's like foolproof of corruption and fraud and greed? And what happens to all the people who are so codependent and reliant on the government and all these systems? They will completely freak out. They won't, I don't know. Like, I just kind of think of these things. I just wanted to ask you, like, what do you kind of envision in how we can create a better way forward and a more solid system, a more fair, not so satanic based.
Well, the main problem with the system is that the ones at the top are sucking all the wealth off. If that was redistributed, we wouldn't have half the problems we have. So we once we take that wealth from them, we can still have people um, like that are um, dependent on the system. We can still look after them. It's not a problem um, because we'll have all that money. There's a lot of money that's just dormant. Like who needs to have a quadrillion-dollar bank account? You know, some of these people have so much money they could buy everything in the world twice. Like you don't need any more money. It's more of a power thing and keeping us up to here so
Control.
that we're always striving just to survive. Where with proper money distribution, everybody prospers.
Hmm.
And they've shown it over the years. Every time somebody comes up with an idea, well, of course, they come in and just start shooting you.
Hmm.
But if we do it en masse, they can't shoot everybody. There's not enough of them.
Hmm. Some people would say that's like a communist method.
It's not a communist method. It's still free market and capitalist if you want, but it's it's the problem is that there's 13 families at the top of this pyramid who have 90% of the money.
Yeah.
You just distribute that back to the people. You
Yeah.
carry on business like normal. It's not about controlling anybody. It's more like get the money out of their hands because all they're doing is destroying and killing and raping and
Yeah.
pillaging and stealing. We have to get the money from them and give it back to the people. And it's not about communism.
Yeah. 100%. I'm on the same page. I know people, if I was to speak to people about that, they'd be like, that's like living like in a communist world. And
No,
they
it's not.
I mean, look around you. We've got people starving, in some third world countries. We have people who are deprived of medical support and help with these treatments that are life-saving, but they can't afford it. Someone's life is being lost because they don't have the money, right? And yeah, we live in a very greedy world with these, families holding all the money, most of the money.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But did you notice during COVID? Oh, come and get your thing and we'll give you a donut even. Like you see the hypocrisy is just so prevalent. Like you got to be able to see what's going on here, people. Like they are trying to kill you with that thing.
Mm,
It's a weapon. They don't give anything for free. And all of a sudden this is free for all the world? Like, come on. Like,
mm,
wake up.
mm.
Because try and get insulin. Oh, you got to have a.
I know, right? It's crazy. Yeah. So if people wanted to join the wave, are you doing it for specific countries now? And if so, which ones and how would they be able to jump on board?
Well, we have documents for I think 9 countries, and not all the documents. So we've only released smart meters, 5G, and the vaccinations. We're still working on the spraying in the air one. So we'll be starting with Canada and US, and then we'll get that one going as well. So some countries have 3, some countries have 2, some countries have 1 document, but it's clear on the site which ones are there. Um, yeah, so we do have I think Australia has I believe you have all 3. You have 2 for sure. New Zealand has one. Actually, we'll probably have another one out. The 5G one will be out in the next couple of days. Um, yeah, United States and Canada have all three. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know off the top of my head which ones have, but we do have enough to to get the waves going, and we just keep
Cool.
building and building and building, and yeah.
To join, they just have to jump on your website.
Yeah, it's $150 a year US. So it's very inexpensive. We're not trying to make money or get members or anything like that. We want these documents out. The real money is in the bills of exchange that we're creating. So like I explained how the court's making those bills of exchange on the child support, we're doing it on the harms that they're causing.
Mm.
And we're creating these bills of exchange and keeping them, just like they did. And we've just crossed $4 billion with everybody working together.
Wow.
And so these numbers will go up very fast. That's why I'm saying we can look after all kinds of things. We can feed the poor, we can clean the oceans, we can do all these things because they're not doing it. They just want to destroy everything.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So we got to take that money, that perceived money from them and give it back to people who are going to do something.
Yeah, something good.
Yeah. And most people do want to do good things. Um, you know what I'm saying? Like we're born into this thing and we can't really see it for what it is. And if we did know, we'd probably lynch them. But we don't have to lynch them. We can just take their money away from them because they're kind of psychopathic and arrogant, and they think they're above everything, including God. And
Mhm.
so you can kind of play off their weaknesses because they're hopelessly egotistical.
Mhm.
So it's just amazing.
And look, to be fair, the human race hasn't exactly been the most
No,
until recently. I must say, we have improved a bit, thanks to the catalyst of the last few years. That really got people, waking up and into gear. But yeah, I guess we have been a little bit docile for quite some time.
a long, yeah, way too long. And we've been led by them too, and we're still being led. Like there's a lot of things where we're not really don't have a lot of choice. Like how much plastic is on everything you buy is like, do you need to have 8 layers of plastic on this thing?
Yeah.
But I
Mm.
do want to have the toy because I want to buy it for a present or whatever. But it's like it's these types of things that we're participating in that have to change, but we have to get in control of the money system
Yes.
before anything's going to change because money talks in this world right now.
It's the harsh reality and the harsh truth.
Yeah,
It's classic. Ancient land, Aboriginal land, and mining companies, because they have so much money, can just come on in, win court cases, and start digging up, you know, and it's because money talks, at the end of the day. And so if we starve them, take that away, we can avoid that kind of stuff from happening, as you're saying.
exactly. The corruption stops because without money you can't corrupt people. So uh, you know, the incentive is gone. There's no way to pay them if we can switch the money over. So we just want to transition the wealth over, and hopefully, you know, shortly after that, we won't need money anymore. We'll, go up in consciousness and understand that money it really doesn't exist here. It doesn't need to exist here. And it was introduced and we all bought into it.
Mm.
But I think, the rest of nature all lives without it. And the planet looks after them quite well. But we're told we have to pay to live in here. And it's like,
No.
what? Said who? It doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah, and look, they're very smart in how they've set this world up,
Yeah,
because the reason why we need to rely on money is because of a lack of abundance, because they've taken all that abundance, but we have everything we need. And if that was shared amongst everyone equally, or the resources of the land, and we used the land in a a way that was sustainable, we wouldn't need all this extra rubbish and things going on, and we wouldn't be polluting and damaging, the
Yeah.
earth. And it's definitely a much better world when there is abundance and it's shared equally, for sure.
Yes. Yeah. So we're just trying to get that started because it has to start somewhere and they've got it all. We got to get it from them. And then, there's other people who are building, how to help health and
Mm.
food and all that stuff. But without stopping this money thing that's going on, they're going to kill us. I mean, that's their plan. So
Yeah, I
our
mean, I
job
don't
is,
know how it is for you guys, but it's inflation is really bad here at the moment, and the basic living cost is so hard. And people are really struggling, and I mean, that's all part of the plan, right?
yep, yep. Yeah, because they threw a bunch of more money out there in order to cover this whole COVID thing. So it just um put too much out, and then of course the prices go up.
Which is what they
It's
were
freaking
planning for in the end, anyway.
yeah.
Mm.
So once you've been here for a while, you can see their tricks, and it's not, they don't have, they're clever in a certain way, but they're not clever in another way. They just keep doing the same thing over and over, and you can kind of predict.
Mm.
And so it's their hubris that gets them. It's their arrogance. They think they can pull this off. They think they're just so much better than us, and they're not. They're actually kind of reprobate psychopaths.
Mm. Well, that's been in our favor, the arrogance and the ignorance. So
Yep.
it's worked against them. And
Yeah.
anyone who's not living from a higher, connection and living from the lower realms of greed and stuff, that's always going to be their downfall.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, it's been such a good conversation, Cal. I really appreciate your time and just sharing your journey and what you're doing. I'm actually going to pop your website in the description and in on my platforms for people to jump on there. Are there any other platforms you have? Is it just the website?
No, just the website. So anybody, if you use that link, anybody that comes through this thing it's $150 a year. You get it for 100. So we take $50 off.
Oh, so we're
So
giving everyone a discount. That's good.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's
Thank
just for the first year, but it's something, we just we
you.
want to show that we're not in it for the money. It's not a money maker for us. It's about switching the system. So I will wait until that, because everybody's going to be wealthy at that point.
Mm.
And it's not about trying to get their money. We want to get away from their money actually. So um, eventually we're gonna have to get rid of it. And so we're not trying to amass it. We're trying to switch the system.
Yeah, awesome. And if
Okay.
anyone has any questions, can they contact you or
Yeah, we have a support desk, and there's a lot, we can ask questions there. Members, there's a lot of teachings in a site. So our site is a PMA. Well, it's a church, but it's a PMA on steroids. So it's
oh,
completely private. We can say whatever we want in there, and we're just going to make it bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's protected by the U.S. Constitution, et cetera, et cetera. We're doing everything in U.S. dollars. It puts everything in U.S. jurisdiction, gets it out of Australian or European or whatever, and there's nothing they can do about it.
mm,
It's just it's a perfect storm. Like that, everything that they did is now being used against them. It's just amazing to participate in this. I'm just so excited because they're so caught in their own stuff. It's just amazing.
yeah, and they can't do anything. They just got to watch their own demise.
Yeah, it's like we're taking the snake's tail and sticking it in the mouth, and it's just going to eat itself.
Wow. Thank you for for everything you've done, for what you've been through to get to where you are, and what you're doing right now. It's people like you just make a big difference in the world. So you're doing big things, Cal. You're, you're, I would say you're like a saint.
No, 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 no. And it's not just me either. I want to make that clear. It's
Yeah.
like there's a lot of people behind what we're doing, and they may not be on the interviews, but they're just as important, if not more important. So it's like I want to make that clear as well. It's not me.
Yeah.
I kind of followed a path,
Mm.
uh, but that's about it, really. I mean,
Yeah. Well, thank you to them as well if they're watching. And yeah,
yeah,
I might even have you on again because I feel like things might progress and we might need you to jump on and give us an update.
absolutely. I enjoyed this.
Yeah, me too. I think a lot of people will get a lot from this conversation and yeah, from your knowledge and from your personal experience. And that's always very valuable for others, knowing that you actually lived it rather than just, oh, this is what I learned. And it's yeah, that's
Right.
an important factor in all of this. So yeah, I think this is like your calling and you're doing you're following your calling and what the universe is kind of pushing you, to help humanity. So yeah,
Yep.
thanks again. I'm very honored to have been able to catch up with you and yeah, I look forward to having you on again, Cal.
All right. Yeah, anytime.